screen, you'll be able to enable the closed captioning if you'd like to follow along with the live transcript for tonight's meeting. And it looks like we also have all of the panelists that we're anticipating tonight, Mel. So whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Thanks, Devin. It'll just be a couple of minutes.
Hello.
Okay, I think we will get started now. It's 6 p.m. and my name is Mel Kleckner. I'm the town administrator for the town of Brookline. And it's my pleasure to moderate this community forum related to the U.S. Open Championship. I want to welcome everyone to the second community forum. This is the second of our events. And the last one, as many of you may know, was related to traffic and parking. And that presentation resides on the town's website. We won't be focused on that so much tonight. We will be focused mostly on the health and safety of the event. And so this evening, you will hear from the United States Golf Association, who is running the championship event, along with some town staff, about the health and safety plan for the United States Open. You will hear about plans to keep the neighborhood and visitors healthy and safe, ranging from COVID protocols to security, screening, first aid, trash and waste removal, and extreme weather conditions. And we will take time for your questions and comments. We will conclude tonight's forum with a formal public hearing on a proposal by the USGA to operate during some quiet hours of Brookline, which involves a waiver from the provisions of the town's noise bylaw. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Eric Steimer, who is the United States Golf Association's Director of Open Championships, to begin tonight's presentation. Eric?
Well, thank you, Mel, and everyone else on the call for allowing me to present to you this evening. Really provide, as Mel said, an update on our health and safety planning efforts. This has been a culmination of a lot of different agencies, working with the town of Brookline, working with some of our local neighboring partners. But we do feel we have a pretty good plan and good update to provide you here tonight, and certainly looking forward to updating all the participants on this call. And I will note this presentation will live on Brookline's website. We'll provide that information here towards the end. So if you want to be able to come back and look at anything, it will certainly be provided on the on Brookline's website. With that, I'll go ahead and get right into the presentation, and just wanted to provide this slide as just a quick overview, and just for those that may be new or maybe some U.S. Open information for the first time. Just want to briefly cover off on a quick fact sheet here. The U.S. Open Golf Championship, it is a 7-day event that will take place Monday, June 13th through Sunday, June 19th. With the hope that we do finish on Sunday, June 19th. And as I'm presenting this, it is we're on the heels of the Players Championship right now down in Florida, which is just finishing up their final round on Monday due to inclement weather that they've seen the last 4 days. So we do hope for hope for sunshine during the course of those 7 days, so we can crown our champion Sunday, June 19th, and create that historic moment here in Brookline. The format is 72-hole stroke play. We will have the full field of 156 players Monday through Friday. After Friday's second round, we will make the cut to the low 60 scores plus any ties. So anyone that is tied for 60th place will be able to compete during the weekend rounds on Saturday and Sunday. We'll quickly touch on attendance here, but I'll come back to it here in a few slides. We do expect attendance at the Country Club to be over 175,000 for the week. That is a cumulative number, not a daily number. So just want to be clear there that the 175,000, that is the course over those 7 days, what we're anticipating welcoming on site at the Country Club and in Brookline. Very quickly on tickets and volunteers, we are currently on registered wait list for both our ticket program as well as our volunteer program. We've seen tremendous support here locally, particularly in the Brookline community, which has been very, very great, very welcoming to see the local community turn out, as well as just this region and the Commonwealth in general. So a lot of pent-up demand, I think, for this championship, which has been really reflective of our ticket sales and within the volunteer program as a whole. Just a quick fun fact on media and broadcast. We will welcome over 850 media members from all across the world. We will be broadcasting the US Open Championship with our broadcast partners, NBC, who will provide over 75 hours of live coverage to over 175 plus countries, and also working with an array of other international TV providers. So this is truly a global championship. The golf world, the sporting world, eyes are going to be on the Country Club June 13th through the 19th. Eyes are going to be on Brookline June 13th through the 19th. So we're very excited about the opportunity to really showcase what a great golf course the Country Club is, but also what a great community Brookline is. I mentioned in my opening slide questions and work the USGA has been and the Country Club have been working with the town of Brookline. We have a comprehensive webpage built out, as you see here on this slide, brooklinema.gov/US Open, which provides an FAQ, provides a lot of information in terms of what residents can expect. Just really please be able to use that as a resource for yourself as you continue to educate yourself on championship planning operations, and certainly during the week of the championship. Last but not least, and then I'll jump right into the health and safety piece of this. There are still employment opportunities for the championship. I would encourage anyone that is seeking part-time employment or would like to be a part of this championship to visit usga.org/openworks. There's opportunities presented on that webpage to be able to get involved and also to be able to find part-time employment with the US Open here in June. But to jump right into the agenda for tonight, as Mel mentioned, we want to cover off on a few areas, which I'll skip over this slide pretty quickly as Mel covered off on it. We want to be able to speak towards our COVID planning efforts, working with Brookline Police and Fire Departments on some of our public safety coordination, as well as fire suppression, emergency medical services, first aid services, and then also be able to speak a little more towards what our ecology and waste removal program looks like, in addition to food and beverage and our course evacuation protocols. At that point, I'll turn it over to, or turn it back to Mel to be able to allow some of the department heads with the town to be able to speak a little more towards their planning efforts, and then we'll roll into the 7 o'clock noise bylaw hearing, as Mel mentioned. But to jump into it, COVID-19 monitoring and planning. From the USGA's perspective, we continue to work with the town of Brookline, with the health department, with Segal Reef to really understand or really help keep ourselves educated on any new guidance that comes with COVID planning, and as well as continue to monitor the situation. I will say over the last 2 US Opens, back in 2020, we were at Wingfoot Golf Club, which is located in Mamaroneck, New York, as well as in 2021, we were at Torrey Pines Golf Course, located out in San Diego, California. And those were two US Open championships for us that were very impacted by COVID. Whether it was in 2020, we were restricted from having fans on site, from having volunteers on site, really just key personnel in that sense, as well as players were allowed on site during the 2020 US Open. Fast forward a year to 2021, we were able to have limited capacity on site. What this looked like was a little more than 10,000 plus fans being welcomed Wednesday through Sunday of the championship. And I really wanted just to quickly mention those as the USGA, along with all of our partners in this championship, unfortunately have had the experience of having to plan COVID US Open championships, which as we look ahead to June of 2022, and as we continue to monitor any new COVID developments and work with the town of Brookline, work with public health officials, it's really, it's our hope that we continue to progress in the way we progress and be able to really get back to hosting a normal US Open, which is what our plan is. To be able to welcome fans, to be able to have the capacity that we are accustomed to seeing pre-COVID, and to be able to present that experience to the country club, to Brookline, and to all the folks coming to this championship. But having said that, we continue to remain vigilant with our best practices that we've learned between Wingfoot and Torrey Pines, whether it's disinfecting, cleaning, sterilization, both from an on-site perspective, but also just from a getting to and from the championship perspective as it relates to our shuttle programs, and working very closely with our ecology teams and different vendors to make sure that we are providing a healthy site and service to all of our fans. As I mentioned, we'll continue to work with Brookline's Health Department to, again, plan for any of the unknowns that may come up between now and June. We will be proactive in our planning approach. If tough decisions are necessitate, we'll certainly have those conversations and look to continue to work with the health department to make sure we're acting in the best interest of everyone. But with that being said, not a very significant COVID-19 update. Again, as I mentioned, I want to, we're hopeful that we can be able to showcase this championship to the 95+ million global viewers, that be able to show them the town of Brookline and the country club and the great place that we call home here. But kind of switching gears here, I do want to quickly touch on our public safety committee. This is led by both Brookline Police and Brookline Fire Departments. And I know we have some representation from both departments here on this call tonight. Brookline Police and Fire will be our lead acting law enforcement agency for this championship. And really what that means is the buck stops with Brookline Police and Brookline Fire as it relates to all public safety questions or issues. Along with Brookline PD and fire departments, they're receiving support from all of the town of Brookline departments for that matter. As we show here on the slide, the Department of Public Works, amongst other various departments, working with Robert T. Lynch, or as some refer to it, Brookline Golf Course, to be able to host our public safety compound at the golf course itself, to be able to provide those services, be able to provide that footprint to all the supporting agencies that you see here on this slide. Without touching on every single agency here, we have received tremendous support locally from the surrounding community agencies, whether it's in Boston, Newton, Boston College, the Sheriff's Office, et cetera. Because as we think about this plan as a whole, we will have heavy on-site security presence as well as heavy off-site security presence in the form of uniformed law enforcement officers. This is certainly a taxing championship for the lead law enforcement agencies based on anywhere we go. And that's why when we have the opportunity to work with a force like Brookline Police and Fire Departments, they have the local connections, the local relationships to be able to pull in mutual aid supporting partners to really assist us with the plan. So the local help here has been tremendous to see, and Brookline Police and Fire Departments continue to do a magnificent job in helping plan this championship and make sure that we provide a safe and secure environment for everyone coming to the championship, but also for the surrounding community that is going to be more heavily impacted by the championship operations. I do want to call out just very quickly, we will receive support from federal law enforcement partners, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, United States Postal Inspectors, FAA, amongst other various departments that are supporting or providing resources or assets to this championship to, again, help really build out a robust plan to make sure everyone is safe and sound. But coming down to the last two bullet points here, from an on-site law enforcement security post perspective, we will have significant details on site, both in the uniformed law enforcement officers that are assisting us in various locations, high touch point areas where a lot of the crowds do tend to build, to really be the eyes and ears out there and be able to respond to any situation as necessary. In addition to the uniform law enforcement, we will be working with a private security company that will be providing the support of over 350 private security officers during the course of any day of the championship. They are really kind of the frontline defense, and then Brookline, as well as the other supporting agencies that you see here, are there to help respond and provide their service, that next level of service from a public safety standpoint. Additionally, as Mr. Kleckner mentioned, we did provide a pretty comprehensive parking and transportation overview back on January 10th, which that recording is posted on Brookline's website that I mentioned before. But I wanted to quickly mention that as from a offsite law enforcement perspective, we will have significant traffic posts out and around the immediate roadways. As we think of the Clyde Street, Lee Street, Newton Street, some of those surrounding thoroughfares of the championship. We will be, again, working with Brookline PD, working with some of those supporting agencies to make sure that we have the traffic control officers in place to assist traffic and keep everything moving efficiently. So jumping ahead to the next slide here, safety screen emissions process. Part of our part of our security plan for this championship, it's really twofold in terms of getting into the championship. And I know this doesn't necessarily apply to all the residents that may not be coming to the championship. But for those who are on the call that are intending on coming to the championship, you will go through a two-part security screening process. Much like what you do at the airport, you will be, anyone coming to the championship, whether it's a fan, a volunteer, myself, a player, you will be subject to going through a security screening process that includes non-divest metal detection, where we do have a robust list of prohibited items. Anyone coming in with a prohibited item will be asked to return that item to his or her car, or in some cases, check that item at the championship grounds and then be able to get that prohibited item as they come back out. All of these admissions, all these security entry points will be manned and staffed by Brookline officers, as well as their supporting agency or mutual aid supporting agencies. In addition to, once you get through the security screening process, then there is the ticket or credential verification process, which is exactly what it sounds like, where anyone coming in the championship will have to have the proper ticket scanned or the proper credential scanned. So again, switching gears here a little bit, but as it relates to more security impact for not just the championship, but for neighbors in the surrounding vicinity of the country club, we are working with the Brookline DPW transfer station to conduct an overnight servicing program for the championship. And what this is any vehicle, well, let me back up here for a second. Beginning Sunday, June 12th, we will be doing a full championship ground security sweep to make sure that everyone there is credentialed. This is Sunday before the championship. Make sure everyone there is supposed to be there, to making sure the championship grounds and the surrounds are safe. And ultimately, once we get into championship week, starting Monday, June 13th, any delivery vehicle, anyone needing to come service or replenish, restock, hot dog buns or whatever the case may be, all of that will be coordinated over the overnight hours of roughly 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. With that, and with the Brookline DPW transfer station, we will have that overnight servicing taking place at the transfer station, which is located right off Newton Street near the West Roxbury traffic circle. Those activities will include Massport providing a piece of security scanning equipment that's going to know what's inside a vehicle, that's going to know what's inside a truck making a delivery. And again, all this will be coordinated, so any delivery coming to the championship grounds has been screened by public safety officials, as well as managed through our private security staff to make sure anyone coming on site is not bringing anything they're not supposed to be bringing on site. With this operation, it is kind of in a remote area out here at the transfer station. We will be providing some lighting to help Massport, to help Brookline PD and our private security team operate this equipment. That will be in the form of temporary or in this case portable light towers that will be strategically placed and moved around to not be able to really impact the neighbors surrounding the DPW transfer station. In addition, from an overnight servicing standpoint, we will be providing light towers on the golf course to help those deliveries, make their rounds from, whether it's replacing dumpsters or if it's restocking food and beverage supplies. We will have light towers on site at the country club for the overnight hours. And if there ever becomes a time where you're a neighbor or you live in the surrounding area of the country club and lighting these portable light towers become an issue for you overnight, we would ask that you please contact 2022 US Open at USGA.org. Let us know that you're having an issue with lighting, and we'll certainly look into it, and we'll do our best to eliminate that as much as possible. But again, please be proactive in reaching out to us if you do have any issues. But coming back on site during the week of the championship, we will be providing fire suppression in the form of Brookline Fire Department. We'll have one fire engine on site, or in this case, fire truck on site, as well as one of their smaller brush fire unit vehicles to be able to really provide that rapid response to any area of the golf course where a bigger fire engine may not be able to get to. In addition, we have enlisted the support of Fallon Ambulance, who will be providing 2 ambulances on site, as well as roving ALS and bike teams. More again, the ALS cart and bike teams are for rapid response all around the golf course. Should someone, slip and fall or have any issues, Fallon will be there to support on the grounds with their advanced life-saving paramedics. Then additionally, we are working with Mass General Hospital. Mass General Hospital will be staffing 3 first aid stations, as we like to call them, on site. This includes a physician in each first aid station at any given time, in addition to registered nurses, chiropractors, and all the supporting first aid personnel that MGH would like to provide to those tents. Ultimately, as USGA, we're a golf organization. We're certainly not experts in the EMS, first aid, or fire suppression fields. And that's where we do believe we have some great partners here with Brookline Fire, with Fallon, and with Mass General to be able to help provide that safe environment on site, in addition to a healthy environment on site. I do want to call out the bottom bullet point here: emergency services for local residents and abutters will remain uninterrupted. As we discussed in the January 10th presentation with some of the parking transportation logistics around the golf course, residents that are impacted by those road modifications, you will continue to receive uninterrupted emergency service needs, mail and package deliveries, waste collection. School buses will still be able to get to and from your neighborhoods as necessary. And this is all being coordinated between the USGA, the country club, as well as, first and foremost, the town of Brookline, the various town of Brookline departments, in addition to Brookline PD, as well as the fire department. So again, want to just be very specific. Emergency services for local abutting neighbors is being considered and taken into account. And those are all plans that we are continuing to coordinate with Fallon and the other first responders in the area to be able to get to and from the homes around the golf course. So switching gears again, sorry to keep switching gears, but I'm gonna switch gears again. Ecology and waste removal. The USGA, we are working with a local company to manage all of our on-site waste hauling, in addition to having dedicated ecology staff on site to assist in a variety of different manners. First and foremost, this is let's just call it waste removal. We will have trash, recycling, composting bins throughout the grounds of the championship, along with educational signage, as you can kind of see here in the picture on the screen. In addition to ecology staff in these various key high traffic areas to really help educate our fans, volunteers, whomever's at the championship, of the appropriate diversion of their waste materials into the appropriate bins. Additionally, our ecology teams, they will be responsible for cleaning and disinfecting all facilities. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, through our best practices during the 2020 US Open, as well as 2021 US Open, we've learned a lot over the last 2 years, and our ecology team has learned a lot over the last 2 years in terms of how to properly disinfect, sterilize, and clean these various areas, and quite frankly, the frequency in which they need to be doing that. Obviously, anytime you have as many folks on site during a championship round, there's going to be some areas that are more highly trafficked than others. And that's where we will strategically, again, position our ecology teams in those areas to make sure everything is being scrubbed down, clean, and disinfected appropriately. But as we look on site, let's move off site for a second. And working with the Brookline DPW team, Department of Public Works team, led by Aaron Galentine, as well as with the assistance of Director Kevin Johnson, we will be able to provide uninterrupted service of waste collection during the normal days, in which if you're a resident around the country club, if you live on Lee Street, Clyde Street, Newton Street, we aren't necessarily changing trash collection, waste collection days. We may look to run those trucks a little bit earlier, which I'll allow Aaron or Kevin to speak to here in a little bit. But again, just want to point out that waste and recycling collection for residents on those high impacted roads will continue through the championship and within the surrounding Brookline community as a whole. But as we talk about waste removal, from the USGA standpoint, as we plan this championship, we will have temporary restroom facilities, whether it's portalettes, restroom trailers, whatever the case may be, provided on site for all fans, anyone that's at the championship, at which point those portalettes or restroom trailers, those will be serviced nightly with the waste and gray water taken to an offsite treatment facility outside of Brookline. As I mentioned, that servicing process all happens overnight. So those areas will be cleaned. In addition, we will be providing restroom attendants throughout the various areas of the portalette pods or the restroom trailers to, again, make sure everything's being well kept, being cleaned, disinfected, and so forth. But again, speaking probably more towards the on-site plan here, and I'll jump into an off-site comment here in just a second. Anyone that is coming to the championship, we have partnered with Ridgewell's Catering. This is a catering company that's been with the USGA for well over 20 years, providing support to the US Open, and really the group that manages our catering and concession operation. Just want to quickly share for fun, these pictures you see on the screen. Ridgewell's was out here on February 8th, if I recall my dates correct, on February 8th, to welcome local Brookline businesses to be able to showcase their food and beverage options, at which point Ridgewell's is going to incorporate a lot of the local Brookline small business products into their menus, into their dining options that we'll have on site. So saw a great turnout for the Ridgewell Showcase event, and kudos to Justin Lawson over at Brookline Golf Course for hosting that day, as well as working with the Chamber of Commerce. Phenomenal day, a lot of traction, and we're happy to report that we'll be working with quite a bit of the Brookline companies that did turn out to support us in that sense. But with that, from the food and beverage program standpoint, one thing that Ridgewell does great for us is they really streamline their menus and prep to be able to reduce food waste. A lot of the food and beverage that is brought into the championship, some of it will be prepackaged, although a lot of it will be cooked on site, whether it's at the golf course or potentially at Pine Manor College. All that does take place during the day of the championship, along with Ridgewell's will, from just as we think about waste and recycling and sustainability, Ridgewell's will use compostable serviceware, food packaging, and really try to limit their footprint as much as possible, while working with our ecology team to make sure food waste, trash, recycling, all that equipment is being properly diverted to the right composting site. In addition, I mentioned the ecology team. Also, Ridgewell's has a robust wait staff team that's responsible for cleaning and disinfecting all of our food and beverage areas, whether it's inside a hospitality facility, or if it's at a concession stand, or if it's at a picnic table. We'll make sure that everything is being disinfected in a timely manner, and some of those other key touch points that I continue to hit on. Last but not least, and I'll come down the bottom bullet point here, as part of the health plan for on-site, for all of our on-site fans, volunteers, etc., we will have designated hydration and water refill stations. What that looks like is anyone that is coming to the championship will be able to bring in a 32-ounce size bottle or less. When that individual does bring in a 32-ounce bottle or less, it will have to be empty when they do bring it into the championship. Just from a public safety security standpoint, that bottle will need to be empty, but we'll have the opportunity for that person to be able to refill or fill up their water bottle with water at any of our hydration stations around the golf course, as well as within our first aid facilities. So something we take very seriously is hydration. Again, as I mentioned, I hope we get some warm weather and sunshine during the week of the championship, and we just encourage all our fans to remain hydrated, and we want to make sure we provide that service to them. But coming down here again, just want to quickly touch on our course evacuation protocols. This is something that we take very seriously for really two different reasons. One is in the event of severe inclement weather, and the other is, which I'll get to here in a moment, is just a true public safety incident. But starting off with the weather side of it, in the event that there is severe weather, the USGA will coordinate with Brookline PD and with other public safety officials around the golf course to make sure that we're efficiently clearing the golf course. And how this is done is really in almost a 4-step process, which is registered alerts, alerts that will be sent to anyone on site cell phone. They will be posted on leaderboards. They'll be shown on any of the digital television boards we have around site. But essentially it's a 4-part alert system where alert 1's a weather advisory. Hey, we may get rain, we may get some inclement weather here at some point today. Before we bump down to an alert 2, which is a weather watch for us. This is when the USGA really starts notifying in earnest all the fans, all the folks on site that inclement weather may be approaching. And then we transition it to a weather warning, where a weather warning is weather is more or less imminent. This is probably about 60 minutes, almost 90 minutes out from when the weather is supposed to hit us. At which point we start really encouraging fans to either start seeking shelter or start making their way back to the shuttle buses in advance of being able to take shelter. The last alert there is weather warning. This is when we're pretty much going into true lockdown mode. This is, electricity's in the air. There's just substantial winds, whatever the case may be. This is when we truly go into a shelter in place scenario where all of our facilities are being opened up to anyone and everyone to make sure that we're providing a safe haven for everyone on site to be able to shelter in place and let the inclement weather pass. With that, I failed to mention at the top of the slide here, the USGA, we will have an on-site meteorologist. This gentleman's been with us for well over 10 plus years. He'll set up more or less his own little weather bubble, if you will, around the country club and around the greater Brookline and Boston area to really be dialed in and to let us be actively letting the USGA know if any weather is approaching or any any type of weather for that matter is approaching that we need to be aware of. And really the on-site meteorologist is kind of our first line of defense there before the USGA escalates it with public safety officials to start prepping for the necessary impact. Ultimately, if we do go into weather warning, our hope is to resume play at some point. If the weather passes, we're going to do everything we can to get the players back out there to keep competing. If the weather, like what we saw at the Players Championship this week down in Florida, if it continues to storm or provide a situation where we cannot compete, that's when we'll postpone play into the next day, which, knock on wood, hopefully is not the case. But as we look at the weather course evacuation plan, one of the bigger impacts that the residents may feel in this sense is just the need to be able to get shuttle equipment, get our shuttle buses down to the golf course, get them ready for a weather warning type situation where we need to truly evacuate the golf course, get people off site, get people in buses or back to their cars. And really that could happen at any time during the day. Our play will be from roughly 7 a.m. to probably 7:30 at night. We're still working through what that schedule looks like with our broadcast partner, but essentially, we could be in an inclement weather situation from sunup to sundown or anywhere in between. So that's where we'll have a coordinated message with all of our shuttle providers, and again with our public safety team to make sure that we do have shuttles where they need to be in the event of inclement weather. The other course evacuation procedure that I'll briefly touch on, and I might defer to Chief Allen or Deputy Superintendent Cullinane to maybe hit on this later, but it's in the event of a true public safety incident where above and beyond inclement weather, this now requires the involvement of police to be able to respond to any such situation, at which point in time the USGA, all of our providers, all of our vendors, we're going to take a step back and really look to Brookline Police Department as our lead law enforcement agency to be delivering the right message and making sure we're doing everything in coordinated fashion and if there's ever a case of a true public safety incident. So I do want to leave some time for to be able to kick it back over to Mel. But I think first and foremost, the health and the safety of the U.S. Open Championship for both attendees and the surrounding community, it remains of the utmost importance to the USGA and to the country club. And we certainly cannot put together this championship or plan for this championship without the support of the town of Brookline and all the wonderful work that all the various departments have done to really help us better understand what the concerns are within the town, what the concerns are for them from an on-site perspective, and be able to put all this together. It's been truly wonderful to see the cooperation, the partnerships have been developed to really help build out this public safety, not just the public safety plan, but also the health plan as well. With that, again, I included the FAQ, the questions up here on the screen. Please, for any resident that may be on the call, please visit that website. It's a wealth of information in terms of what the championship's bringing to Brookline, what the impacts to local residents look like, and please just continue to use that as a resource going forward. We'll continue to keep that website updated with more and more information. But with that, I would like to, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Kleckner here, and certainly happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Eric. That was very comprehensive. And I do want to mention that, Eric mentioned how the town is working very closely, as well as the country club, with the USGA. And there are a lot of resources, a lot of municipal resources that are being brought to bear on this event. And I want to assure the residents of the community that the USGA covers those expenses as part of their general permit to have the championship here in Brookline. And we're happy to do that. They're happy to do that, but I just want to make sure that that was clear with all the folks who are here this evening. I did want to, just before I turn it over to department heads, I do want to mention a couple of folks who are here. I see in the attendee screen, Select Board Member John Van Scoyoc. Welcome, John. And also Glenn Johnson, who is a member, a liaison from the country club for the US Open. So welcome to John and Glenn. So I think what we'd like to do at this point is just to turn it over to a few department heads, few departments that I think are more directly involved in the health and safety situation. We'll make some brief presentations, and we'd like to leave it for some general questions and answers. I already see at least one question in the Q&A. But at this point, I would like to turn it over to our health department and introduce Sigal Reese, who is our newly appointed director of our public health department, for a short presentation, or if you wanted to introduce your staff, Sigal.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. As said, I'm Sigal Reese. I'm the new Public Health and Human Services Director. I'm starting my third week here, so I'm actually thrilled to have with me Roland, who is the Assistant Director and also in charge of Environmental Health, and also Pat Maloney, who was the Interim Director before I got here. So excited to have them here to help me answer questions since I am so new. But I'm just going to give a brief overview. Eric talked a lot about the public health areas that we will be regulating, but just to summarize, we'll be looking at food safety and ensuring that all operators have permits, and we will be having an on-site health inspector, detail inspector during the event and also leading up to the event. As preventative measures, we are requiring pest control contracts. We don't anticipate a problem, but want to make sure we do any preventative pest control in the area too. And as was described, the waste and sewage haulers will be permitted by the departments. We'll be able to keep track of those activities, as well as any outside food vendors. And lastly, as Eric described, we have had discussions about if we need to, if there is, a COVID surge, or if we go in a negative direction with COVID, to keep in contact if we do have to adjust any plans. But hopefully, we keep on a good track with that.
Thank you, Sigal. Thank you, Roland, for being here for any questions that may arise. Would like to turn it over to the building department. Our building commissioner, Dan Bennett, is not here this evening, but happy to have Paul Campbell, our assistant building commissioner, here. Paul, if you wanted to say a few words about the way in which you'll regulate the building and other structures at the country club.
Thank you, Administrator Kleckner. The building department has been working with USGA staff for several months on plans for construction of raised platforms, tents, grandstands, TV towers, and other temporary structures for the venue. Building department inspectors will ensure compliance with zoning bylaws and Mass State Building Code, issue permits, and perform on-site inspections. During the event, inspectors will be present to verify occupancy and monitor overcrowding. This will be a coordinated team event with USGA staff, fire, police, and the health department. The town will not be issuing open air parking licenses. There will be no park and pay site parking allowed on residential properties other than those already approved for the golf event. Residents can park on their existing driveway, but not on lawns or landscaped areas. And I just want to reiterate that parking is prohibited on lawns or landscaped areas. Owners should not be advertising parking or exceeding parking on any lot. Lastly, anyone listing their property as a short-term rental or STR should register their property through the STR portal on the town's website. All applicants have to do is register and get inspection and compliance from various departments, and they should be all set. And that is all I have to say in regards to the building department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I'll move now to the police department. We have Acting Chief Richard Allen and Deputy Superintendent Paul Cullinane. Chief Allen.
Hi, my name is Richard Allen. I'm the acting police chief in Brookline. Thank you for attending the meeting. I just wanted to speak briefly to let you know that one of our goals for this event is to minimize the impacts this event has in your neighborhood and to continue to provide the day-to-day services that we do provide in order to maintain a safe community. And I'll add that if there are issues during this event, there's going to be numerous officers stationed in and around the event and in your neighborhood, and please feel free to reach out to them and they'll be happy to assist. I'll introduce Deputy Superintendent Paul Cullinane, who is the point person for our department for this event. Paul.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. Deputy Superintendent Paul Cullinane. I've been working with the USGA, Mr. Steimer, Mr. Mills, and their colleagues for since approximately last June, and right after their last US Open. And we have a pretty comprehensive public safety plan. We've involved a lot of our state, local, and federal partners. We have the FBI involved for drone mitigation. We have US Postal Service inspectors for package screening and EOD technicians from the Metro Boston Homeland Security area. I feel that at this point we're very well along. I feel our internal safety plan as well is very comprehensive, and I think our traffic plan is going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Allen and Deputy Superintendent Cullinane. And then last but not least is our fire chief and emergency management director, John Sullivan.
Thank you, Mel. It's been quite the process going through these several months and almost a year now with the USGA and anticipation of this wonderful event. And I have to say that the partnership that we have not only with USGA and our neighbors across the region as far as police, fire, EMS, and DPW and all those state and federal agencies has been wonderful to be part of. It is well said that we have our site plan and transportation plan well at hand. And so as such, our ability to respond to the neighborhoods in and around the country club, as well as to the event area is well mapped out. And we want to rest assured all of our neighbors and our constituents that public safety will still be easily provided to anyone in the area, despite the traffic patterns that may need to be changed in order to be effective and efficient to get our people to this event. Along with that, you heard a wonderful presentation on the course evacuation, and that falls into the emergency management realm. We've been working very closely with the USGA staff as well as our other public safety partners on plans to issue evacuation messages through our mass notification system. If you have not signed up for Code Red mass notification in the town of Brookline, I encourage you to go to the town of Brookline website and do so. You can sign up specifically for USGA messages. And we want to assure the folks that are coming from outside of Brookline, if your community is signed up with Code Red and you are a subscriber in your community, if you are in Brookline and there is a Code Red message that goes out, you will get it. As long as your cell phone is pinging in a tower that is in approximation to Brookline, you will get those messages as well. And Eric gave a great overview of the many other facets of the way we would be able to get messages out to everyone. So along with Brookline Police, Fallon, and Mass General Hospital, we will be providing on-site EMS to the many thousands of folks that'll be coming and going. And then obviously it extends out beyond that to our parking areas, and we'll be providing that service as well for emergency medical responses using our normal combination of fire and EMS from the town. So we're really excited as these plans come together into a cohesive package, and we're really looking forward to this wonderful event for the town of Brookline.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chief. So we have a number of other department heads that are not going to necessarily make presentations, but they're here, members of our Department of Public Works, our Recreation Director, and several other department heads. So at this point, we're going to take some questions and comments about the overall health and safety plan. If you have specific questions or concerns about noise, we are going to have a separate presentation and formal public hearing beginning at 7. So anything other than noise, what you've heard, we will like to talk about right now. Devin, if I could ask, I do see one question in the Q&A. Could you maybe ask that question and then let people know how to submit other questions or get your attention if they want to speak?
Absolutely. We are going to encourage attendees to use the hand raise feature or the Q&A feature if they'd like to ask a question or make a comment. The first question in the Q&A is, why not set a date to test the lighting that may affect neighbors at night? Eric, I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Devin. And that's a great question to ask. I think from our end, we certainly can do that. From a golf course security standpoint, we do expect to really step up our golf course security, which has already started for that matter. But our overnight presence in terms of managing the golf course, managing the entrances into the country club, and just the property as a whole. We're not at the point where we feel it's necessary to turn on light towers here in March. Certainly not the case. But as we look ahead, typically this has been something that we've really started doing about a week and a half in advance of the championship. So as we look about right around that June 5th timeframe, to be able to turn on a few light towers, to be able to provide security to certain areas, that's something that we'll look to do. At that point in time, again, as I mentioned, if any neighbors are having any lighting issues, please contact 2022 US Open at usga.org. Once we learn of the location of that light tower or of the issue, we'll certainly look to reconcile that and make it right. So we'll do our best to make sure they're strategically placed, shining down on the golf course, not shining into windows or anything like that. But if you do have any issues, please contact that email address.
The next question in the Q&A is about school busing for the Buttonwood neighborhood. Will our students still be able to access school buses?
I can take that one. Yes, they will be able to. It's from my understanding, the Buttonwood Village that goes to Heath School will come out of Country Road. Twice a day, we're gonna open Country Road to take a right onto Lee Street, and that's for the school buses. If there are more school buses, we will work with them, but that's the only one that's gonna be allowed to do that. That'll be in the morning. In the afternoon, they'll just use the regular bus route that everyone else uses when they're coming back.
The next question and comment is, after reviewing the plans, I am unclear who to communicate concerns regarding traffic and parking for abutting residents. I'm also concerned about lighting and noise, and it feels like we're being directed to different people and departments.
I can take the first part. You can contact me, Deputy Superintendent Paul Cullinane. My email is pcullinane, CULLINANE @brooklinema.gov. And my extension here at the police station is 730-2241. I can help you with the parking and the traffic.
Well, let me just say, this is Mel Kleckner. I think it's a valid question. And it is not our intent to have, you to have to figure out which problem it is and who to call. I mean, of course, I think if there's a fire or police incident, we know to call 911. But I think it's a fair point. Lee, from Lee Jackson, our Recreation Director, any thought? Is there intended to be a one number or a place that people would call to be a clearinghouse that could be effectively directed to an appropriate department?
Yes, we do intend to set that up and put that email address on the website. We do plan to have an email and a phone number. That'll go on our USGA page, as Eric Steimer shared, is being updated regularly once that information is available. Thank you.
Thank you. That's
Lee
a
Jackson, Recreation. Thank you.
good question.
The next question is, within the Buttonwood Village neighborhood, Whitney, Larkin, Forestdale, Country and Meadowbrook, Clyde and Goddard streets, will on-street parking be allowed?
On-street parking will be allowed with the proper lanyards, or not lanyards, but hangers, tag hangers, and that's designated for residents. I believe Mr. Steimer could elaborate more on that if you'd like.
Yes, excellent question. And again, we cover off on a lot of that in that January 10th presentation. So anyone in that neighborhood, I'd encourage you to watch the video that is posted on Brookline's website. But that neighborhood, the streets that were just mentioned, will all receive parking hang tags. Residents will receive what I'll just call a resident pass, as well as be able to request resident guest passes to allow for if you have family or want to have family or friends over during the week of the championship, you'll certainly have that ability. In terms of enforcement of parking, I'll defer that one back to Brookline Police, but certainly you'll have the opportunity to get to and from your house, as well as guests will be able to get to and from your house based on available space. And sorry, I might just add one more comment there. We do anticipate sending out those parking hang tags to the neighborhoods in that limited access plan in May. So you will get those roughly a month or so ahead of the championship, and it will include instructions of what that plan looks like, as well as if you need additional parking passes on a particular day, what that process is.
I see that Julie Berkeley has their hand up. I have promoted you to a panelist. You can unmute if you have further question.
Devin, I think that was an error, although I believe that there was a follow-up to making sure, to encouraging the town to set up that website or contact information sooner than later, so that people can get used to it. And I'm sure we will work on that.
At this time, there are 25 attendees and no one is using the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment. This could be a good time for any department heads who have last minute updates or something to close us out. Anyone wants to weigh in before we transition to the public hearing at 7 p.m.
So Mel, this is Chief Sullivan, and I just texted Devin to let her know that our emergency management staff and volunteers will be happy to monitor the email addresses, address that gets put out in the phone in order to be able to field calls and get answers back to residents. If
I
that's
appreciate it. Yeah, John.
something that we could work out.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. We often do staff phone banks or emergency phone lines during certain events. And so we have some experience with that, John. I think that's a great suggestion. And we will be putting out that information in a more formal way in the near future. Thank you, John.
We can probably even, get the call center up and running for a designated time frame, as well as being able to leave messages and monitor emails.
Very well. Any other town staff that wanted to mention? We've got about 5 minutes before we can begin the next session. So people are encouraged to answer any questions or ask any questions, or I'm just going to wait until 7. So any other thoughts? Anybody? Any other departments? Any other questions from the crowd?
I'd just come on and say it's been a pleasure working with the departments in the town and the USGA on our health and safety plan. And I look forward to continue working with all of you on it. Thank you so much for this full presentation. And I am going to be posting all the information shared at the 6 to 7 p.m. session on the website again. So that's brooklinema.gov/US Open. So I'll be posting all the information there. And the presentation this evening. So that, stay tuned. That'll come soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
There are a couple of new questions in the Q&A. The first is, should residents be looking into higher liability insurance?
Well, I don't know who can take that question, but my feeling is that the town would not provide any guidance on that. My sense is that there's unless you're doing something that's unusual on your property, I don't think that would be necessary. But again, would probably not give that private advice. We might encourage you to talk to your insurance agent for that. Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to wade into that one?
I'll just weigh in from the USGA's end. That's the first time I've ever been asked that question. I'm unaware of that being done in the past at previous US Open sites. And just I'll make the comment from the US Open Championship itself, whether it's in and around all of our parking lots, around our shuttle stops. We do not encourage tailgating or anything like that. It's not like going to maybe a Red Sox game or a Patriots game or a Boston College football game. Within all of our parking lots, there's no food and beverage sales. There's no alcohol permitted. It is park, get on a shuttle, or park and walk to the championship, and then come on site at the country club. So a lot of that's coordinated through our shuttle program that we have in place, as well as our shuttle drops being either on the country club's property or right up against the property. So I can't answer that question for you, but certainly we try to keep all of our people on site at the country club or get them back into their cars at the end of the evening.
We did have a general town question regarding when the switchboard would be live when calling town hall. We actually don't have a live switchboard operator, but if you know your departmental extension, you'll get directed immediately to town staff. But we are open, operational, and just as a reminder, the indoor mask mandate was lifted this past Saturday. So as we move forward, folks can feel free to pop into town hall, make an appointment online, or just visit us if you're looking for a specific department or need a little help problem solving.
Well, that's great. I think that brings us to our next segment of the program, which is a formal presentation and public hearing. So at this time, I will convene a formal public hearing on an application for waiver of the town's noise bylaw by the United States Golf Association for operation of the U.S. Golf Championship at the Country Club and including other various nearby properties. Just wanted some background. The town regulates noise levels during traditionally quiet hours to protect the public health, welfare, and quality of life of Brookline's residential neighborhoods. This is codified in Article 8.15 of the town's general bylaws. There are emergency exemptions in the bylaw, as well as a provision that allows the select board or their designee, in this case this evening, to issue a permit or waiver when bringing noise into compliance with the bylaw would be impractical or create an undue hardship. The town and the USGA was always aware that the nature of this event would require some nighttime activity that would most likely not be in compliance with the noise limitations of the bylaw, which would require a waiver. And so in order to do that, there must be a formal public hearing, and that's what we're convening this evening. The USGA will first make a presentation on the location, the days and hours, and the type of noise and the efforts to minimize those impacts to surrounding neighborhoods. And then we'll take public comment and discuss any other conditions for a waiver. I'll first call on Eric Steimer, again, Director of USGA's Open Championships, to review the noise bylaw proposal.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Kleckner, and bear with me just a second as I try to share my screen once more. So, well, welcome everyone. If we have any new members that were participants that jump on the call, I'm Eric Steimer with the United States Golf Association. I'm the director for the U.S. Open Championship and have had the pleasure of working with the town of Brookline, all its various departments, as well as numerous other agencies in this area to really put together the health and safety plan for this championship. And for those that just joined, we did just spend about an hour discussing the health and safety update for this championship, which presentation will live online on brooklinema.gov/US Open. That's brooklinema.gov/US Open. So I'd encourage any residents to check out that presentation and the impacts as it relates to our health and safety plan, as well as numerous other questions that have been asked to the USGA and to the town. That website provides an excellent FAQ. With that being said, as Mr. Kleckner mentioned, the focus for this evening is to focus on the noise bylaw and frankly, the noise impacts of this championship on the surrounding neighborhoods above and beyond just the country club. And with that, I'll click on to the next slide. And really within this agenda, I do want to just cover off on a few different properties that the USGA will be using for the US Open Championship, which is scheduled June 13th through the 19th of this year of 2022. And wanted to speak a little more towards the specifics of what we're doing at each of the various sites at the country club and then those properties above and beyond. But knowing the country club is our host site for the championship, it's certainly a special place in our eyes, but certainly where the most impact is going to be felt is at TCC. And really for us, this is about a roughly 6-month process where it's almost 3 months of build to host those 7 days of the championship. And then also factoring in the post-championship tear down and what we call site remediation to restore all the areas back to the conditions in which we found them. But with this, and I apologize, a couple of these slides are pretty wordy. So again, this will be posted online for the public to take a look at to really understand the dates and times. But from March 15th through May 31st at the country club, between the USGA and our vendors, we will be, for the most part, working within Brookline's normal daytime operating hours, not necessarily outside of that bylaw variation. And those operational activities, as you can see in the bullet points here, will include construction of flooring, construction of temporary tented facilities, the installation of decor within all these facilities, the construction of roadways in and around the property, and these are all temporary roadways for that matter, in addition to building grandstands, bleachers, bringing in some mobile facilities to help support some of our championship footprint, whether it's trailers, portalets, waste dumpsters, etc. But during those daytime hours, and as you can see from the top of this bullet point, things will pick up June 1st through the 11th. Those hours get a little bit longer into the morning and into the evening as we put on the finishing touches of this championship to really get ourselves ready for not just June 12th, but also for June 13th, which is Monday, the first practice round of the championship. And I apologize if I already said it, with the US Open, we are a 7-day event. It takes place Monday, June 13th through Sunday, June 19th. In the event of any type of postponement, whether it's weather related or whatever the case may be, we would look to push into Monday, June 20th. But knock on wood, our hope is we're crowning our champion Sunday, June 19th evening, and then immediately starting the tear down and restoration process thereafter. But June 1st through 11th, again, we can expect those hours of operation for those finishing touches to get a little bit longer, starting in the morning, finishing in the evening. Certainly understanding that the town's bylaws are the weekdays hours are roughly 7 to 7, and then those weekend hours, they go down from 8:30 to 6 o'clock in the evening. Whereas when we look at the hours here, this is essentially close to 7 days for us, June 1st through June 30th, as our vendors look to put the finishing touches on, and as well as the tear down process where everyone's trying to get torn down as quickly as possible. Starting July 31st at the Country Club, those hours kind of go back to normal daytime operating hours, which I'll leave it at that. But also want to just share the screen up here, and hopefully you can see my cursor. We will be accessing the Country Club from really 3 different areas, between going through Heath Street, through Pine Manor College, and then coming down through Pine Manor College's tennis courts to be able to access the western side of TCC's property, utilizing the main entrance of the club off of Clyde Street, as well as utilizing what we call the East Gate here at the Country Club. That's also off of Clyde Street, almost right across from where Buttonwood Village is. But with the Country Club and with this noise hearing, I do want to call out some of the implications or the noise implications that those that are in the immediate surrounds of the Country Club can expect. Simple construction noise is the easiest way to term it or sum it up. Power tools, wood and metal saw cutting. We will have some temporary fencing being put in the ground of the Country Club, whether it's for corrals or pack of house areas. So fence post driving in that case. There will be the use of mobile generators, which we are working with the building department and the health department on, to limit the intrusion of those generators and what the noise of those generators brings. In addition, with any construction project, in this case, we will have construction vehicles, whether it's trucks delivering equipment or resources, whether it's the use of forklifts to help move equipment around the championship site, or just simply I'll just call them gas golf carts or utility carts that again are either help moving people to various construction areas or to move equipment around the site. With that, and one item that we talked on earlier was the use of light towers. We will have light towers on site at the Country Club to really help with overnight servicing as well as overnight security. We don't anticipate turning those light towers on in advance of June. But once we get into the week or week and a half leading up to the championship, we do anticipate turning a few light towers on to really help with overnight security, in addition to the week of the championship. As we look at overnight servicing, that will take place during the hours of 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Where we are accessing the Country Club overnight during championship week to either restock, replenish, or service any of the championship facilities that need service. Probably the first question I get is, why do you do that? Why do we do it overnight? It's really to maintain our public safety security perimeter around the championship, but also being a national golf championship, one of golf's 4 majors. Our players are competing over the course of a long day. We'll start anywhere as early as, roughly 7 a.m. and golfers won't finish until about 7:30 or so at night. With that being said, we want to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for all of our fans on site. So we don't necessarily want vehicles driving around during the course of the day, which is why we look to the overnight hours to really provide that service and restocking operation. But again, at the country club, you can expect, general construction noise. We're going to try to keep this as concise and as efficient as possible to operate within normal hours as much as we can. But certainly as we look to the month of June, our hours do expand as we put the finishing touches on the construction of the championship, as well as trying to tear down right after the championship so a lot of our vendors can get to the next PGA Tour stop where that equipment needs to go. With that, I'll switch gears. I'll move over to the Brookline DPW transfer station, which for those that are familiar with this site, it's up near Skyline or just past Skyline Park. As you can see the arrows on the screen pointing into the DPW transfer station, which abuts Newton Street and Hammond Pond Parkway. This property for us is being used more as operational compound staging space. This is something that we'll be using as early as today and tomorrow to be able to provide some office space, some storage space for the equipment that's being brought in for the championship, whether it's the tenting and flooring, what scaffolding, plywood, generators, whatever the case may be. To be able to utilize space back here in the DPW site to stage that equipment, to be able to consolidate that equipment, and then ultimately be able to move that equipment from DPW transfer station over to the country club. Probably the question we get asked is, why don't you just take it straight to the country club? For those that are familiar with the property itself, it's got a very small footprint as it relates to most US Open sites. So we did have to look for additional space off-site, which between Brookline DPW as well as Pine Manor College, which I'll get to here in a second, are going to be two off-site locations where we look to utilize some off-site property to help with our construction as well as championship week operations and our teardown process. In addition to what I just mentioned, and again, you can see the hours up here on the screen of when we expect really to be impactful to this area. Really nothing in major starting until June 1st, and then kind of culminating into championship week. June 12th through the 20th, again, this really turns into more or less a 24-hour operation from us. I mentioned the overnight vehicular security screening process on the previous slide. The DPW transfer station is going to act as our screening location. So any service vehicle that's coming in to replenish or restock or service any of our championship facilities on site at the country club will first be instructed to go to the DPW transfer station, where that vehicle will be screened by both Brookline Police Department as well as Massachusetts Port Authority, who's providing us with some screening equipment to make sure that what that delivery or what that driver is bringing onto the championship grounds is what they're supposed to be bringing onto the championship grounds. So that operation really takes place June 12th through the 19th. Those hours are between 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for overnight servicing, which is why you see this site as 24 hours during the week of the championship. But as I mentioned, clicking to the next slide, next location, Pine Manor College. We have partnered with both Pine Manor College and Boston College to be able to utilize Pine Manor's campus, not just for access through the campus itself, to be able to get down to the western side of TC's property, but we're also going to utilize the campus for other various operational spaces or additional footprint that we need to be able to construct the championship as well as execute some of our parking transportation plans during championship week. Again, the hours up here, you can see they're a little bit different from the country club, but really everything's staying within the existing town of Brookline daytime hours until we get into June 1st, which is when we start to ask for the variance or the exemption to be able to operate a little bit earlier into the morning, later into the evening. With that being said, noise implications very similar to the country club, so I won't won't pontificate on it too much, but use of power tools, construction vehicles coming through the campus to make deliveries, as well as being able to utilize Headley Soccer Field, which is where my cursor is right now next to the tennis courts, to be able to utilize that soccer field as one of our shuttle bus drop-off locations during the week of the championship, which that makes it, makes it a little bit different than TCC. We will have shuttles going into Headley Field to drop off and then pick up fans and attendees of the championship over the course of those 7 days. Moving a little bit southeast, I guess, of the golf course and of Pine Manor College, we will be using Allendale Farm. This site is being used for a a shuttle drop-off, which is where you see these yellow arrows pointing towards. Shuttles will be entering Allendale Farm off of Allendale Road, tracing up some of the farm roads that are there, and then ultimately dropping on the existing paved area that runs through Allendale Farm, where you can see the pink dotted lines here. Those folks that are getting dropped off at Allendale Farm will essentially walk down the pink dotted lines into the country club's property over by what is our championship hole number 5. In addition to that, and I'll hit on the noise here in a second, we will have a pedestrian queuing space on Allendale Farms property, which will help service the shuttle drop that we have on Newton Street. And again, you can see the pink line, it gets cut off here on the map a little bit, but those individuals or those pedestrians will walk up, cross Newton Street, go up Clyde Street, and then come into a championship gate that's just off the picture here. A lot more limited footprint here. April 1st through June 5th, we're working within normal operating hours. And really, that's just to construct a temporary road that we'll build off Allendale Road to tie into the existing farm road, as well as to be able to improve some of the existing roadways or existing farm roads that they have to allow for shuttle bus movement through the property. Once we get into June 6th, June 11th, we'll be putting the finishing touches on some of these pedestrian areas that I mentioned. That's when our hours might get a little bit longer at Allendale Farm. And then again, during the championship week, it will be, I really almost don't want to call it a 24-hour operation, but we may have to do some overnight servicing there, whether it's cleaning up restrooms or portalettes or whatever the case may be, which may require minimal access during the overnight hours of championship week. Switching sites once again, Robert T. Lynch Golf Course, Brookline Golf Course. This property will be used for a couple different purposes. First and foremost is our unified command center that the Brookline Police and Fire Departments will make this, we'll call this home for the 7 days of the championship. Justin Lawson, the GM over at at Brookline Golf Course, has been gracious enough, as well as the town of Brookline has been gracious enough to be able to offer us the space in there for our public safety compound, and in this case, Unified Command Center. Additionally, as you can see on the screen here, we will be utilizing some of the existing Brookline Golf Course holes for parking. I do want to quickly note this is not general parking. This access to this property to Brookline Golf Course will require the proper parking permit. In addition to down here, you'll see we'll have a little shuttle drop off off of Newton Street, where we'll have our broadcast partners being able to walk in through Brookline Golf Course to get to the broadcast compound. Again, the hours here, we're going to try to operate within normal Brookline hours during June 1st through June 7th. June 8th through the 11th, we'll likely increase our footprint earlier in the morning, later in the evening. And then ultimately, we've become a 24-hour operation, in particular with the Unified Command Center and with Brookline Police having their compound space there. But as, I guess, operational activities here, I'll call out a few, just a couple bullet points here. We will be installing a temporary bridge. This is hopefully likely to be done in advance of June, which shouldn't have much or any impact on the golfing experience over at Brookline Golf Course. So we hope to do this just in and around play, which is the yellow mark you see here on the screen. As well as within the parking areas themselves, we will look to put down some composite matting surface. This is just, hard Durabase, almost rubber mats, more hard plastic mats to really help facilitate some of the parking movement we need there. And in that case, that will be done in June. And we'll coordinate with Brookline Golf Course on the closure plan. And certainly we understand any type of closures we're asking for at Brookline Golf Course, the USGA will reimburse the town for, knowing that loss or that potential loss of revenue. But again, very similar to the country club and some of the other properties we talked about, with general construction noises, power tools, fence post driving, mobile generators, deliveries of construction vehicles or delivery trucks. So not too much of a change there. Last but not least is Lars Anderson Park. This site is being used for really 3 different reasons. First and foremost, it will be an active shuttle drop for some of the offsite parking that we have, which will be conducted on the, I'm just going to call it the baseball field parking lot, which is the paved area right off of Goddard Street. Additionally, we'll have parking space on the upper field of Lars Anderson Park, which is outlined by that blue line, and then ultimately turn the driveway into what is we call our rideshare operation, your Uber, your Lyfts of the world, or if you're a local resident, you want to drop off your spouse or family member, you'll be able to enter through Avon Street, circle around the driveway of Lars Anderson Park, drop off your passenger or pick up your passenger at the end of the day, and then proceed back down and out on Newton Street. Days and hours up here, June 6th through 12th, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. We don't intend to really be impactful during the early morning or nighttime hours. June 13th through the 19th, again, being championship week. This is not necessarily a 24-hour operation for us, more or less operating from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. To account for any early arrivals that we have, particularly as it relates to rideshare, whether it's volunteers or our catering company or whoever needs to, or for folks that need to be on site early in the morning before our gates truly open. And consequently thereafter, later into the evening, we will have some folks coming back here to catch a ride back home in those nighttime hours. But just want to specifically call out Brookline DPW Parks and Open Space Division have been extremely helpful in planning the process here to make sure we're mitigating as much as we can any noise or any issues at Lars Anderson Park, and certainly appreciate their support and all the thought and efforts they put into helping us develop this plan. I said last but not least, but I got one more. So Clyde and Newton Streets, we did cover off on what the plans for Clyde, Lee, and Newton Streets are in a pretty extensive presentation back on January 8th. As it relates to our parking transportation plan as a whole, I'd encourage anyone to visit brooklinema.gov/US Open. As you can see at the bottom of the screen here, you'll be able to view that presentation. Excuse me, I said January 8th. I meant to say January 10th. You'll be able to view that presentation and learn the impact that the Championship Week transportation plan has on local residents as well as day-to-day commuters through that area. But ultimately for these 3 streets, we will be looking to really to set up these streets with traffic control equipment, with the necessary resources that we need to effectively manage Championship Week, June 13th through the 19th. We'll look to really set up on these streets that you can see identified in red here, beginning at 5 a.m. on June 11th. That's Saturday, June 11th, so roughly 2 days in advance of the championship. In which case our traffic control provider will be helping bring out all the equipment, setting up signage, setting up barriers, or whatever the case may call for, to be able to operate during the week. And with that, an additional noise implication here that I do want to, a couple that I want to call out on these 3 streets. We will have pedestrian queuing for some of our shuttle drops on Clyde Street, on Newton Street, on both of those streets, where we'll have crowd control barriers, more or less a fancy way of saying bike rack, that's going to help corral or queue all of our fans into the different shuttles that are dropping off in those locations to make sure we're doing things safely and organized, and we don't have people just walking anywhere and everywhere down the roads. The USGA's traffic consulting firm, Howard Stein Hudson, is helping us develop this plan as it relates to any road modifications, to be able to make sure we're precisely mapping out how we're going to impact these roadways and how we're going to create a safe environment for not just our fans, but for residents and anyone commuting through this area as well. Additionally, I do want to just point out this bullet point so no one's caught off guard, particularly if you live along Lee Street, Clyde Street, or Newton Street. June 11th and 12th, those daytime hours are going to act as shuttle bus driver training hours, or excuse me, training days. So when we think about championship week, when we open our gates on Monday, June 13th, we want to make sure the folks that are shuttling our fans from the various parking lots we've secured to and from the championship, we want to make sure they know their routes so there's no hiccups. So we will utilize June 11th and 12th to train our shuttle drivers to make sure they know where to drop off, where to turn, and how everything's going to set up during the week of the championship once we open up our admission gates. With that, I'll close out here. Again, properties in use as we talked about: the Country Club, Brookline DPW Transfer Station, Pine Manor College, Allendale Farm, Brookline Golf Course, Lars Anderson Park, and certainly the impact we'll have on the immediate thoroughfares, in this case, predominantly Clyde Street, Lee Street, and Newton Street. And then again, at the bottom here, you just see kind of the timeline going forward: construction and site prep really starting in earnest as early as tomorrow, with some minor work being done on the Country Club site, but it will just continue to ramp up as we get closer to the championship. And as we think about the construction process as a whole, what we're doing on site is much like how you would build a house. Right now, in the immediate future, really anything anyone's going to see is the shell of the tents going up, as we think we got to construct the tent first, get it enclosed or open as necessary before we can bring in any decor items, landscaping, things like that. So it is a process. It takes about 3 months to finalize before we conduct the championship during those 7 days. And then ultimately the teardown process does go quicker than the construction process. If construction takes roughly 3 months, teardown takes roughly 2 months, but we're also building in a little bit of time, as you can see here, through August 31st to account for site remediation, as well as restoration to the impacted areas at all of these properties I've mentioned. So as USGA, we take great pride in our restoration. If we are using a property, we want to make sure that we restore it back to the same condition, and frankly, probably hopefully a better condition in which we found it. But please rest assured, our staff will be on site until that last blade of grass is green once again. And we certainly look forward to being able to showcase the championship during the seven days. And I just want to thank the town of Brookline, all the various departments, and all of its residents for the support and that you've provided, that you are continuing to provide to the USGA, to the Country Club. This has been just a phenomenal experience for our staff, and to be able to bring the championship back here for the first time in 34 years is a testament to what this community is, how they embrace golf, and frankly, how they embrace a championship this magnitude. So with that, just want to say thank you. I'll go ahead and close out here and turn it back over to Mr. Kleckner.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for those kind words. So whenever the town issues a waiver or a permit, we do so very narrowly. So we don't make it a blanket permit. We try to limit it in terms of days and times, and to whatever extent the type of activities it's limited to. And so we have prepared a sort of spreadsheet that explains all that. Devin, is that available to post at this point?
Yes.
Thank you. So you've seen the presentation of the Country Club, and they've going to go through all the various programs, but this spreadsheet is intended to represent the specific locations, the specific dates, and the waivers and the waiver periods. And so that is really what we're talking about tonight. It would be the town issuing a permit for the Country Club to waive the noise bylaw. Now, it's not guaranteed that they will violate the noise bylaw during some of these times and events, but in order to be on the safe side, and given the very restrictive decibel levels that are in the town's noise bylaw, we believe it's in the best interest to anticipate that they will violate those noise limits. And so this is the parameters of what this waiver would look like. And I just wanted to make sure everyone knows it's very detailed and not a blanket permission. So with that, this is a public hearing, and we would be very happy to hear comments or any concerns, questions, and we'll do it in the same manner as before. So you'll want to raise your hand or put a question directly into the Q&A feature. So Devin, would you mind coordinating this portion of the hearing?
Of course. At this time, there are 19 attendees, and no one has used the Q&A or hand raise feature to indicate that they'd like to make a comment. As Mel mentioned, you can raise your hand or put your question directly in the Q&A. You would be promoted to a panelist and allowed 3 minutes to ask your question or make your comment. All of this, as many panelists have mentioned tonight, will be available on the town's website for your review, brooklinema.gov/US Open. Okay, I'm going to reshare the spreadsheet because the first question is about why a 5 a.m. noise waiver would be granted on 6/11 through 6.
Can you repost that spreadsheet, please? What location are we talking about here? 11 to, I think that's the Clyde Street and Newton Street locations. And I thought the idea there was to allow staging and other activities associated with getting the shuttle and other locations set up. Could you explain that, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I think for us, this is that early morning opportunity is a way for us to really set up both Clyde, Lee, and Newton Street. Those stretches that I showed on the slides with the red lines, to be able to get them set up operationally for how they're going to look during the week of the championship. The reason we're asking for 5 a.m. on Saturday is it gives our traffic control provider an opportunity to get all the equipment in place before we start to see significant traffic through there, as well as to be able to operate those roads as if they call it a practice run, if you will, but really on June 11th and 12th to be able to manage those roads as if it's a dry run for championship week, but more so than anything to be able to get the equipment out there that we need from a traffic control provider standpoint to be ready to go Monday, June 13th when our admission gates do open. Additionally to that, during the daytime hours, that's when we would do our shuttle driver training, which those shuttle drivers will be driven in, and they'll consolidate themselves down to 1 or 2 buses at a time, but being able to go in a larger bus to be able to learn their routes, learn where the various drop-offs are on Clyde Street, on Newton Street, and to be able to operate that almost as if it's a championship day during those 2 weekend days leading up to Monday, June 13th.
The next question is the playground at Lars Anderson closed for the week? Where will children be accommodated?
Sure, that's a good question. It was expressly included in our agreement with USGA that the park would not be closed for recreational purposes. Now, clearly, there would be some limitations. Is there anybody from DPW or Recreation who could address how we're going to accommodate park users during the week? So I guess we're going to have to get back to you on that. But my understanding was that there would be a special location for temporary or for short-term parking and use of the playground facility by residents or by users. We have to be very careful, obviously, because we don't want that to be abused. We're controlling Lars Anderson Park a great deal because of its location and proximity to the country club. So, but we do intend to have a controlled access and to the use of the park during those days.
Good evening, Mel, Erin Chute Galentine, Commissioner of Public Works. I'll just reiterate what Mel has said. So the park is going to remain open to the public. And while the Goddard Avenue parking lot will be used for some of those, for some of the shuttle drop off and pickup, the parallel parking on Goddard Avenue will remain open to the public. And all of the pedestrian access points from the neighborhood will remain open as well. So the playground will be open, the athletic field, the lagoon, so the area is open to the public. And in particular, the playground really shouldn't have any impact in terms of folks that would be parking and walking over to the club, as that's somewhat set aside. So it was really important to us that the park remain open to the public. Thanks.
Thank you, Erin, for answering that question.
At this time, there is a new question. What measures will be taken to mitigate noise and trash impact to the Buttonwood Village neighborhood? For example, will added recycling and trash containers be placed on the walking and queuing areas?
So again, Erin Chute Galentine, Commissioner of Public Works. We're working with the US Open. We have proposed additional staff to address litter throughout the course of championship week that may impact the neighborhoods. So we think that that is a viable concern, and we want to be proactive and make sure that we have staff to attend to that in terms of any sort of noise or disruption. I think I would look to Deputy Superintendent Paul Cullinane and his team that would help for any sort of exceedances of noise during the event itself.
During the event, we're going to try to keep pedestrian flow away from the Buttonwood Village neighborhood. We have developed a traffic plan with the USGA where cars that are parked at Los Andersons will be actually directed up Newton Street as opposed to Meadowbrook Road. There will be a detail officer at Meadowbrook and Goddard to check out for cars that are trying to go into the neighborhood and to push pedestrians up to Newton Street. So we're going to try to keep as many people out of the neighborhood as possible.
At this time, there are 17 attendees and no one is using the Q&A or hand raise feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Thank you, Devin. Well, I think in that case, this spreadsheet needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but I think this is the basis for the noise bylaw waiver that will be posted somewhere on the website. So there's no confusion about what it is, but I would say, like has been mentioned throughout, is that when there are problems, if there are problems, the town definitely wants to hear about them, and we want to address them. So if it has to do with lighting or a certain kind of noise, or people not complying with this, maybe going in too early or too late, we want to hear about it. We'll have people on the ground, but you're there all the time. You live there, and so we rely on the neighborhood to let us know when things are not working as planned. So we will work on getting those contact numbers up, and as you've heard, there will be a more robust communication call in during the week when the activity is most intense. So with that, I will conclude the hearing, and want to also thank all of the panelists, the department heads and staff who are here today. I want to acknowledge the Country Club. I know that there are members mentioned, previously that Glenn was here, and I believe that Kristen LeCount, the director of the Country Club, has joined us as well. So I want to thank them. I want to thank Lee Jackson, our recreation director, who's my right-hand person in this event, trying to keep all these balls up in the air. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of you who participated, and good evening.